The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Witting.
What happens to a near-death experiencer when the accident that brought on the NDE also does brain damage? Do we rely on our life's memories to rebuild our life on this side of the curtain? And if those memories are gone, how do we cope? Welcome to NDE Radio, brought to you by IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I'm your host, Lee Witting. Sharon Levites was riding a bike to her veterinarian-tech graduation party when she was struck by a bus and nearly killed. 45 years later, that accident and her resulting NDE still affect her life, for better and for worse, since the accident took away many of her memories of her pre-accident life. Sharon is living proof that an understanding approach to near-death experiencers can save them from doctors who would prescribe unnecessary, confusing, and harmful drugs, and even from their committing the NDEr to a psychiatric hospital. About her accident and NDE, Sharon writes, "I will always feel I'm between both worlds. I feel I'm always looking in at the world instead of being a part of it. I feel like I'm a caretaker to many. I'm always there. Life after has always been very hard for me since my NDE. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with missing so much of my childhood being erased from my memory. I feel I was given a special gift and I'm here for a reason. I love who I am, but at the same time, I ask God at times, what is my purpose? What did you want me back for? He has the answers, and deep down, I know I have them too." Sharon, welcome to NDE Radio.
Hi, Lee. Thank you for having me. And it's like, I just hope I don't break. It's something I never really done before. Is come out in the open with this to other near-death experienced people. And it was like I always had to stay hushed because it was something over everybody's head.
Well, that's one of the reasons we have this radio show, is to open up this possibility so that people can understand it's something that really needs to be talked about. Tell us about how your accident happened and about everything you remember about what you experienced during your NDE.
Okay. I just graduated at veterinary technology school, and I was to go to my graduation party. And when I went to get my car, it was stolen. So my girlfriend and I decided to take our bicycles to get there. And that's all I know. And then I got hit by a bus that I have no reconciliation of being in any accident whatsoever. But I saw my body in the street laying there as I was rising. I'm choking up. As I was rising up, feeling so much peace until I disappeared. My whole life, played fast forward to me from day one up until, that's just about it. And then it was like several months later, or a few months later, that I was actually able to comprehend I was ran over, by a bus.
Right. Now, it's interesting that you had a life review. You saw your whole life up to that point, but when you came back, you couldn't remember those early memories, your childhood memories.
These were erased during that time, or
So the brain that held those, your brain, which held the part of your brain that held those memories, was damaged, but the soul that had the life review obviously is not. It's somewhere in your soul those memories still exist.
Little bits and pieces. Like I have a younger brother who I don't remember being in the home at all from this day on, But yet I know when he was young, he broke his leg, and that I remember.
Yes.
It's just like little bits. It's like, I guess, things that were important to me somehow. I don't know.
Now, you mentioned in a conversation we had that you were raised Jewish, but you had this feeling that the that Jesus' disciples were surrounding you during your NDE. Of course.
And I had talks with God. I know because I was thanking Him. And I was told I was back for a reason, but I couldn't tell you what that reason, is anymore. It's like so much that I knew, I don't know. It's like, I don't know, maybe if I was put under hypnosis or something, I might know, or I might not know. Maybe I'm not to know.
Might bring some of that back. Yeah. So they took you to the hospital, obviously, and from what you told me, you were a pretty cantankerous patient. You were running out in the parking lot with nothing on and that sort of thing.
Actually, I was taken to two different hospitals.
Okay.
The first hospital I was taken to was a Jane Doe. And I have, no knowledge of what happened there, or if I was in a coma, or if I was unconscious, or anything. Whenever I asked about it, they just said, "You don't need to know," type thing. It was like, were they trying to protect me, or it hurt them too much to talk about it?
Yeah. Yes.
And then when I was transferred to the other hospital that my mom had me transferred to, that's when I sort of took on personalities of patients that I had. I worked in a hospital, a convalescent hospital, at the time of my accident. And what they told me how I was behaving was exactly like some of my patients that were my patients. So somehow I was taking over them as if they were me.
I wonder if in the absence of your own memories, you were taking on, trying to take on somebody else's memories, people that you had worked with and people that, had been your patients.
I don't know. I don't have any reconciliation being in a hospital at all or being in an accident at all.
Right. You don't remember that?
Not at all. All this information I'm giving you is just what I was told.
And you've also, as a result, probably or possibly of the NDE, you've received some gifts as well. You've had experiences that were prophetic, and tell us about that watch that gave you a warning.
Yeah, I had my grandmother's watch on, and suddenly it started going 10 minutes fast, every 5 minutes. And I had this feeling over me that my grandmother was trying to tell me not to go home, that something was going to happen bad. And I told my therapist that, and, they never want to believe anything, what you're going to tell them. So I went home, and sure enough, there was a knock at the door. And I opened the door, and there was 3 guys at the door. One had a gun, one had nunchucks, and one had a knife. And they pushed the door open, and they pulled out the phone wire from the wall. They didn't have the cable type wires. It was connected inside the wall at that time. And they yanked it out of the wall, and I got tied up with that cord, and they ransacked the whole house. And I sat there very calmly, scared to death, but sat there very calmly on the outside. And it was about an hour later that another one of my roommates came home, and they got him tied up too. And we were both sitting there tied up. But I almost felt safer in a way, knowing I wasn't alone.
Yes, of course.
And then a little while later, another one of our roommates, got home, and we got untied. They were already gone by then. And I'll just know that I just called my therapist, and I said, I told you, I mean, because I was never believed anything that I knew was going to happen, and everything always did happen that I knew was going to happen. But, they just kind of, shine it on type thing in a way, I guess. And, so I ended up moving out of there the very next day. My brother came with his truck and took me away.
But you said your watch worked just fine after that.
It went normal after that.
Isn't that interesting? Well, some people who've had NDEs also have an electrical effect or an electromagnetic effect on various things like watches. But that must have been your own foreboding, a prophetic warning that was coming to you that you were going to be in trouble when you went home. Then there's a really neat story you told me about the man who was dying in the supermarket. Maybe you could tell us that story.
Yeah, I was in Ralph's supermarket. My daughter was 3 years old at the time, and we were doing some grocery shopping. And all of a sudden, I hear one of the girls that worked at the store saying, "There's a dead man! There's a dead man on aisle 5," or whatever aisle it was. I really can't remember. And, "Is there a doctor? Is there a doctor?" Just she was in total panic. And I went over there, and I kneeled down over him, and I was guided to take my left hand and to put it in his right hand for calmness, and to put my right hand on his forehead for energy, and I was to repeat these words to him. You cannot leave us right now. Your family needs you. It's too close to Christmas. You must come back. And I kept saying it over and over and over again in the same type of tone. And I guess in about 5 minutes or so, all of a sudden I felt his color change and his hand getting warm, and he sat up, and just as he sat up, paramedics came. I stood up and walked away as I heard, "How did she do that?" But I was just sort of, I don't know, pretty lightheaded type thing. I just walked away.
So
I don't know.
Where do you think that guidance came from? Where do you think that guidance came from? That the instructions to put your one hand in his hand and the other on his
from the other side. I think I was being probably used in a way, to help bring him back.
Yeah.
I don't.
Now, have there been other instances where you had these prophetic feelings or for warnings of things to come?
Well, I don't know. Like one time, Bob and I were sitting in our apartment, and I stood up and I pressed the buzzer, to let somebody in, and I sat back down. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "My sister's here." And he says, "The buzzer didn't ring." I said, "Oh, So I sit back down, and all of a sudden, my sister's at her door, and she goes, "It was really weird. I was about to press the buzzer, and the buzzer pressed and let me in." Oh, he called me a witch for a while. And then another time when I was in a psychiatric hospital, there was this girl that our minds were really able to connect to one another, and I guess she knew it. And I remember telling one of the therapists, "She's going to choke me. She's going to choke me," And, of course, they're not going to believe it. No, it's all in your head type thing. I go, "No, she's going to choke me," Well, sure enough, she ran up to me and grabbed me by the throat. And then, like another day or two, I said to him, "She's going to try to trip me. She's going to try to trip me." No, Well, anyways, sure enough, she tried to trip me, And, anyways, what they did with her, they put her in some other institution for dangerous minds, I guess.
Or at least dangerous behavior, at any rate.
Yeah, something like that.
Tell us a little about, now, you went to a neurologist because you were experiencing blackouts. And he wound up putting you in an institution. Tell us about that.
That was like 11 months after my accident. it was like 3 months that I was able to actually comprehend. I was in an accident, that I was in a hospital, and all this stuff, and everything that happened. I left home. I just didn't feel like I belonged there, and I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. Actually, I was totally in la la land, I guess. I took a job, and I had that job for a while, and I started getting more and more little bits of my moral being, and I felt I don't belong here, but then it would last a minute, and I would continue doing what I was doing. And as times went by, more and more of my moral being would come, and then I started having blackouts. I would just black out. So I went to a neurologist, and I told him that I feel like I'm being led around and being told what to do, and that's all I remember telling him. I mean, there could have been more, but I remember that, and he says, "We need to put you in a hospital, and if you don't go willingly, we'll have to commit you."
Wow.
So I think I went willingly, and my mom was real upset about that, I remember. She says, "You shouldn't have let him do that," da-da-da. But, so I was pumped with all kinds of drugs. It's like they probably didn't know anything more than I knew, about me. And, I pretty much went into a catatonic state. I went, there was a period I was totally mute. There was a period I was catatonic. God, I'm getting lost here. And I had a friend that, who's a psychologist now, and he says, you don't need these drugs being pumped into you. He said, "Let me take you away from here." And I stayed with him for several weeks, and he took me to a doctor, a natural medicine, naturopath type doctor, and he put me on like 16 different vitamins three times a day. Well, some was like several kelps, and I remember the kelp, but I don't remember what the ones were. And within a couple of weeks, I became human, in a way. I was able to talk. I was able to carry on conversations. I was able to be a person. And I wouldn't take drugs since. I wouldn't, allow that stuff being put in me. And I went through a period of moving from one place to another like 11 times in a year, trying to find safety and peace where I was, but the only people I really knew were people from outpatient therapy, and everyone from the outpatient rehabilitation therapy were either alcoholics, drug addicts. So every time I moved, I was with another alcoholic or another drug addict, and yet they wanted to put me in a halfway home, but yet, stubborn as I am, no, I don't need a halfway home. I don't do drugs. I don't, type thing. And so it took me a while to find where I could live without drugs and without the alcohol, and so I was running around a lot, and I found my way. I found a love, and we had a very good, strong relationship for a couple of years, and it was sort of hard on me, and it went sour, and so I left, and I became a nanny, and I stayed a nanny for about 9 months, and then I met Bob, who I'm with now.
Yes.
And I've been with him forever after.
And you have 2 daughters?
I have 2 daughters. Yep.
Yeah. Now, at what point did you start telling people about your near-death experience? Did you do it at any time when you were in the hospital, or did you tell the neurologists about it, or?
I don't think I ever talked about it. I don't think that really ever came up. I had such a psychic ability, I was able to pick up so much, from one mind of somebody's, and I think that's what was talked about, and I wasn't totally there because I didn't have my childhood, so I didn't really know too much. I talked to my family about what happened, with that, and
what was their reaction?
Well, let me see. She had a head injury. She was in an accident. It's hard for them to believe. My younger sister sort of, believed it because she says, right after the accident, I was talking about God and thanking God and, stuff like that. But it was like, I learned right off the bat, people don't get it,
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
You just don't,
what's so interesting about your case is because you lost your childhood memories, the thing that we orient to, when we've been in an accident or something critical has happened, we start recovering ourselves because we have these memories. We remember our relationships with our mother and with our sisters and siblings and so forth. But without that, about the only guidance you had was your present situation, which must have been pretty painful, and your NDE, which you had a good memory of because you saw God.
I was very strong-willed, like in the hospital. In my mind kept saying, you're not going to be here, you're going to get well, you're going to live a normal life. And I don't know, was it me thinking that or I was being told that from the other side. I couldn't tell you. But I knew I was going to have a normal life. And I'm not a vegetable, and the doctors were wrong. And I didn't need drugs, the doctors were wrong. And, it's like they're not God, they just practice medicine, but doesn't make them right. And do they really listen? Or do they really just prescribe because they think that's the thing to do,
They throw all kinds of drugs at a problem. I've seen it, over and over again.
Yeah.
You say that it's possible to feel lost and confused and still be able to love yourself. And I thought that was beautiful. Tell us about that. How do you reconcile those feelings?
Oh, well, see, because who I am as a person in my soul, through my heart, I love that person. I mean, she's been through a lot, but she was determined. She knows what love is, and I think if you can only love others if you can truly love yourself. And what I stand for and who I am is all good. Like for some reason, if I'm in a situation that's not good, what I have to do to get over it, I have to go seek what I can do for somebody to make their life better. It's kind of weird, but that works for me. I like to see putting a smile on someone's face. It's almost like I feel like I'm related to everybody. They're all my brothers and sisters. All children are my children. I mean, that's how I actually feel in a way. Like all babies have to call me auntie. And they belong to me in a way that they're in my heart. I want to take care of them. I want to raise them. I want to love them. I don't want anything happen to them. I want to protect them. And, I see so much, stress in the world and weaknesses in the world and debilitation in the world from experiences that they had in life that they don't know what love is. They don't know how to give of themselves, you know, in a way through love. I think there's so many blocks of walls and shields and things that keep them afraid out of fear, you know, out of hurt, that they don't know how to put that shield down, you know. And I think I see what happened to me through learning that I grew my own weaknesses that grew into a lot of hurt and a lot of pain from what I see. But it's like, but what I want to do is try to change that for other people. I want to be able to let them to heal. You know, it's like I want everybody to heal. I want everyone to be peace with inside. You know, I know I'm not a miracle worker, but I wish I were.
It sounds a little like you picked up some of the teachings that the disciples that you encountered had learned from Jesus about caring for others. And you've become almost like a guardian angel to, you've assumed that role in a way. And perhaps that was altogether derived from your near-death experience.
Most likely. See, I feel it's so important. It's been such an important part of me to take care and help those when in need. And because the world is just too stressed and people are lost. And I believe they really need to love and trust others, and they lost that. And without that, they're unable to move forward. You know, we live so much in our past that do they really know how to live in their now, you know?
Yeah. And you were forced to live in the now because you didn't have the memory of your past.
And it's like, you know, I see people get jealous. I see people feel threatened. And at the same time, I can only feel their pain. I can only feel hurt. But I don't know what jealousy feels like. And I don't know what, I wish I did. I wish I knew how to get angry, you know, because some things, you know, would irritate me, but yet I don't get angry. I feel hurt. And I wish there's something I can do to make them feel better, you know. It's like a crazy situation for me. I just, you know, I see the world breaking, you know, breaking bad and breaking fast, you know, in the 45 years of my afterlife. And I see, you know, it bothers me to see on money. This is one thing that gets to me. It bothers me to see on money. In God we trust. Because to me, I don't see no importance in money if it's used in selfish ways for power and greed. I can only see money making me happy if I can use that money to make something happen, to make
something good happen.
Yeah. And, I mean, what really gets me is when I see on the news people unable to get health care because they're not insured, and to see the homeless and they're looked at as scum because they might have had, you know, something tragic that happened to them that made them homeless. We all have a story. We all have chapters in our life. You know, we all have had misfortunes in our life. But there are people, too. They are a
absolutely. Sharon, I think we're out of time for today. I want to thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for telling us about your NDE and the difficulties that memory loss from that accident could cause. let me tell the audience that if they'd like to listen again to this or any of our past shows, they should go to our website at nderadio.org. And for more information about the work of IANDS and our upcoming conference in Orlando, Florida in July, check out that website, iands.org. And tune in next Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern, for more NDE Radio. This is Lee Witting saying thanks for listening.